All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Sindhura. I'm the president of Pan India Journal Club. So, firstly, I would like to welcome all of you to today's 7th Journal Club of Pan India. So, November being the Diabetes Awareness Month, so we have taken the topic of plant-based dietary patterns and its associated and how it's associated with type 2 diabetes. So that is the paper that we'll be discussing today. And here are all the participants of today's Journal Club session. So let me show you the flow of today's presentation. So the panel introduction will be taken by me, and the study introduction part will be taken by Deshna, and methodology will be done by Sandhya, and results by Srinidhi and Josna, and discussion part by Dr. Melinda, and conclusion by Dr. Nitesh. So first, let me tell you the mission of PAN. So what exactly PAN does? So Physician Association for Nutrition, it facilitates the integration of evidence-based interventions into the core matrix of healthcare by empowering various healthcare professionals and also facilitating the education of evidence-based nutrition in med schools. PAN also provides guidance to policymakers and industry players in designing strategies and products for creating better food systems and achieving nutrition equity. PAN also involves the international medical community in activities for furthering know-how on various healthy eating environments and healthy food systems. PAN increases the knowledge integration and sustainability of programs by conducting various programs and projects through partnerships and collaborations. PAN creates public awareness by educating public through various community outreach programs. So the PAN India currently does various outreach programs to spread the PAN mission forward, like conducting various journal clubs, discussion forums, webinars, in-person CMEs, various polls, and multiple activities, and many more to come in future as well. So if you look at the mission of PAN, PAN India aims to be the catalyst in revolutionizing the healthcare into a whole person care model with evidence-based nutrition at the core matrix. So the mission is to address the multitude of issues related to dietary choices of people in India by facilitating better healthcare systems and safer food environment and public awareness. The Physician Associations for Nutrition is led by a very strong, dynamic, and an inspiring team of members. Mr. Nicholas Openrider, the co-founder and current chairman of the board at PAN International, and Mr. Alan Kornberg, the advisor to PAN India, and Dr. Rajina Shaheen ma'am, medical director of PAN India. And currently, there is a strong medical PAN team structure, including various doctors, nutritionists who contribute as program managers, ambassadors, volunteers, and also international team who are also actively involved at various capacities. Doctors, faculty, or medicos who would like to get associated with PAN India can join us at various capacities like ambassadors or volunteers to help spread the mission of PAN forward. So finally, I'm delighted to inform you that the PAN India Journal Club team is getting bigger and bigger day by day. And in today's current Journal Club presentation, we have 3 new team members that have joined us today. That is Srinidhi, Josna, and Sandhya. So they'll be doing their respective introductions during their part of the presentation as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And Deshna, you can take it forward with the introduction part, please.
Yes. Good evening, all. So first, starting with the introduction, we will know about NCDs, that is non-communicable disease. So non-communicable diseases in India, over 60% of death in India are contributed by NCDs, and that is from WHO. NCDs include cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, chronic respiratory disease, neurological disorders like epilepsy, and common mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. So looking at the risk factors, there are 2 types of risk factors. It can be non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. When you look at modifiable risk factor, one of the important risk factor is unhealthy diet. These risk factors are the root cause of all the diseases which we see. So the next picture shows the root cause. It is unhealthy diet, tobacco, indoor air pollution, and all these causing various type of NCDs. Next slide, please. Now looking into diabetes. Next slide. Diabetes. So diabetes is a chronic disease in which pancreas do not produce enough insulin, or when the body cannot effectively use the insulin produced. It can lead to hyperglycemia or raised blood sugar, and it's a common effect of uncontrolled diabetes, and over time leads to serious damage to many of the body's systems, especially the nerve. This causes and is a major cause of blindness, kidney failure, heart attacks, stroke, and lower limb amputations. Next slide, please. So what are the risk factors in particular of diabetes? So when we look at the risk factors, it is lifestyle, it is hereditary causes, medical conditions, psychosocial, demographic risk factors. So prevention, early diagnosis, and prompt treatment of hyperglycemia are the cornerstone of preventing morbidity and mortality due to diabetes. Next slide. So when we look at the worldwide prevalence, the number of people with diabetes rose from 108 million in 1980 to 422 million in 2014, rising more rapidly in low and middle income countries. Between 2000 and 2019, there was a 3% increase in diabetes mortality rates by age. In 2019, diabetes and kidney disease due to diabetes caused an estimated 2 million deaths. In 2019, diabetes was the direct cause of 1.5 million deaths, and 48% of all deaths due to diabetes occurred before the age of 70 years. So this is the burden of the disease, that is diabetes. Next slide. Diabetes, in particularly in India, there are estimated 101 million people, those who are suffering from diabetes, and nearly 136 million are pre-diabetics. The ratio of diabetes to pre-diabetes is less than 1:2 in many of the less economically developed states, suggesting that these states can expect large increases in the prevalence of diabetes in the near future. More than 50% of the people are unaware of their diabetic status, which leads to health complication if not detected and treated early. A very high prevalence of diabetes and related NCDs in the country, translating to a large population of individuals at risk of not only cardiovascular disease but also of chronic complication of diabetes. That is 11.4% are at high prevalence are at risk of having high prevalence of diabetes and related NCDs. Next slide. And for that, our India has put on a new scheme, that is Ayushman Ka Amrit Mahotsav. 75 million people with hypertension or diabetes on standard care by 2025. That is the goal. Next slide. So today's title for our study is Association between Plant-Based Dietary Pattern and Risk of Type 2 Diabetes. The objective of this particular study is to assess the association between plant-based dietary pattern and the risk of type 2 diabetes. The study hypothesized that plant-based dietary patterns are inversely associated with the risk of type 2 diabetes. So the more the people are having plant-based diet, the lesser the risk of having type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Going on to the study's introduction, plant-based dietary patterns have the potential to prevent or manage several major chronic diseases, including type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. The pattern may also exclude certain animal products which are potentially beneficial for the prevention of cardiometabolic disease, which are those yogurt and fish. When we talk about plant-based diet, it also includes refined grains, starches, and sugar can also be characterized as plant-based diet, although they are independently associated with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. So a recent meta-analysis of observational studies suggested that vegetarian dietary patterns are associated with the lower risk of type 2 diabetes, but this was a cross-sectional study. And another meta-analysis of clinical trials demonstrated a beneficial effect of plant-based diet. So overall, they wanted to know the various studies, what were the studies conducted to see what is the impact of plant-based diet on diabetes. I would like to request Sandhya to continue with the methodology part. Thank you.
Sanjay, you can unmute yourself and continue, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, perfectly audible.
Okay. So, good evening, one and all present are here. Myself, Sandhya Girish, have completed my post-graduation in nutrition. And from past 5 years, I'm into a teaching and research sector as well as worked as a nutritionist in the Department of Food Science and Nutrition. And currently, I'm having a 6-month-old baby. Hence, I thank Dr. Preetham for introducing me into a journal club, Pan India. So I'm very grateful for the entire team for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I hope I'll give my best in serving the community. And coming to the methodology of the study is between association of plant-based dietary pattern with the type 2 diabetes. The study is being registered in the Prospero International Prospective Register of Systematic Reviews, where the study is being taken from the 3 data sources, that is PubMed and Medline, Embase, Web of Science, through 15th February 2019. And coming to search term, excuse me, ma'am, slide is not visible.
Slide is not visible. Okay. Now is it visible for you?
The previous slide.
Okay, I'll move it. Now it's visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So the search terms are like a plant-based diet, vegan, vegetarian, type 2 diabetes, and non-insulin dependent diabetic mellitus. And all the standards for the study is being taken from the meta-analysis of observational studies in epidemiology checklist. Next slide, please. And coming to the study selection, the analysis, the studies for this analysis has included all the prospective cohort studies, whereas it has been excluded the retrospective studies and cross-sectional studies, ecological, editorials, meeting abstracts. And the study population in this analysis has included the adults with the type 2 diabetes more than 18 years old, where they have excluded the gestational diabetes and pre-diabetes as well as the type 1 and children with the type 2 diabetes. And the publication date range for this study is been up to September 30th, 2018. And this study involves only the human studies. And according to the study, the plant-based dietary pattern is defined as higher consumption of plant-based foods, whereas lower consumption or exclusion of animal-based food. By this definition, vegetarian dietary patterns or a vegan dietary patterns were also included as a plant-based dietary patterns. And in studies that classified adherence to plant-based dietary indices, the Association for Overall Plant-Based Dietary Index, that is nothing but it contains refined grains, starch, sugar, or a sugar beverages, etc., was included in the pooled risk estimate, whereas the Association for a Healthful Plant-Based Dietary Index were included in the sensitivity analysis. The studies which mention the dietary indices, they use the risk estimate that compared the best to the poorest quality, that is highest quantile to the lowest quantile adherence to the plant-based dietary pattern. And the studies which mention the prior defined plant-based dietary pattern or a vegan or a vegetarian diet, they considered the study estimates which compared the diet that are most restrictive of the animal foods, that is vegan or a semi-vegetarian, with the least restrictive such as omnivorous diets. Next slide, please. And coming to the data extraction and assessment of the quality, the following information is being extracted from the each study, that is number of participants, cases of diabetes, mean age, mean BMI, then follow-up duration, dietary assessment method, sex composition, method of scoring adherence to plant-based diet, and diabetes ascertainment and covariates that adjusted for in statistical models. And if any additional information that is required, they have contacted the authors itself. Then assessment of the quality of the study is done using the quality assessment tool for observational cohort and cross-sectional studies available on National Heart, Lung and Blood Institute website, which assigns a score between 0 to 14, where 0 indicates the studies doesn't have any criteria, whereas 14, the studies which scores 14 meets all the 14 criteria. And the studies who scores less than 10 score, those are excluded from the sensitivity analysis. Next slide, please. And coming to data synthesis and analysis, this analysis is being performed between December 2018 to February 2019. And they have calculated the pooled relative risk using random effects meta-analysis of hazards ratio from each study. And the statistical heterogeneity was assessed with the Cochrane Q test. And to characterize potential sources of heterogeneity, subgroup analysis was performed with the strategies of age, sex, region, plant-based diet, and diet sources. And meta-regression using age, BMI, sex, duration of follow-up is being done. Then sensitivity analysis is done through inverse variance fixed effects meta-analysis, and publication bias is seen visually through funnel plots and Egger or a Begg-Mazumdar regression test. The potential non-linearity is being assessed using dose response meta-analysis. All analyses were conducted with a Stata version 14.0. And all the p-values were from two-sided tests and results were deemed statistically significant at p-value less than 0.05 unless stated otherwise. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Srinidhi Prakash. I'm a third professional year medical student at Panimalar Medical College Hospital and Research Institute. I'm also a researcher. My areas of interest are public health, nutrition, medical education, and bioethics. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Shruti Sharma ma'am, Dr. Sindhura ma'am, and my mentor, Dr. Surapneni Krishnamohan sir, for introducing me to Physician Association for Nutrition, India and International. So now, for the next few minutes, I shall navigate you through the major findings of this comprehensive systematic review and meta-analysis. This meta-analysis included data from 9 studies published across 7 reputable publications. As you could see in this flow diagram, out of 1,200 articles retrieved from 3 databases, Medline, Embase, and Web of Science, 7 records were included for quantitative analysis, which included 9 cohorts. The authors of this study have meticulously examined the experiences of 307,099 participants, identifying 23,544 cases of incident type 2 diabetes. These studies, ranging in duration from 2 years to 28 years, all employed a prospective cohort study design, ensuring a meticulous observation of trends, not just in a specific point of time, but over a period of time. The robustness of the finding is further reinforced by the consistency in methodology and the diversity of participant demographics. The individuals aged between 36 to 64.6 years, each with a baseline BMI ranging from 23 to 26.7. And moreover, all the studies uniformly employed the food frequency questionnaire to assess the dietary pattern of individuals. Next slide, please, ma'am. 5 studies, Nurses Health Study NHS-1 and NHS-2, Nurses Health Study 2, Health Professional Follow-up Study HPFS, Singapore Chinese Health Study, SCHS, and the Rotterdam study utilized plant-based dietary indices to gauge adherence to plant-based eating habits. Additionally, 3 studies, Adventist Health Study, AHS and AHS2, and Zuki Health Study, TCHS, compared individuals following vegetarian or vegan diet with those not adhering to such dietary pattern. And at last, the Attica study derived a vegetarian dietary pattern through factor analysis. Next slide, please, ma'am. So this tabular column here summarizes the baseline characteristics of published studies examining plant-based dietary patterns and incident type 2 diabetes, so which I have explained in my previous slides. Something which I would like to add here is that these investigations primarily identified new diabetes cases through self-reported symptoms or medication use, which was further confirmed using validated questionnaires. And statistical adjustments varied across studies, but most of them accounted for well-known diabetes risk factors like age, BMI, smoking status, family history of diabetes, alcohol consumption, physical activity, etc. So these cumulative findings shed light on the potential impact of plant-based diet on diabetes risk, offering insights into their potential health benefits. Now, let us dive into what this study has to say about the plant-based diet and the risk of type 2 diabetes. So this is a forest plot of studies examining the association between plant-based dietary patterns and risk of type 2 diabetes. The findings of this study reveals a fascinating connection. That is, embracing plant-based dietary patterns correlates with a decreased risk of developing type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the first forest plot is based on the random effects model, while the second is based on the fixed effects model. Both random effects and fixed effects model have been employed to analyze the relationship between plant-based diet and diabetes risk, and the pooled relative risk value, which was based on random effects model, was 0.77, while that based on the fixed effects model was 0.80. When a more specific dietary index, which is termed the healthful plant-based dietary index, is employed in place of a general index, the association between adhering to this specific diet pattern and reduced diabetes risk is notably strengthened. So this suggests that focusing on a specific dietary component enhances the observed risk. So this figure here illustrates the changes to the overall association between plant-based dietary pattern and risk of type 2 diabetes when removing one study at a time, and this was calculated using random effects meta-analysis. Despite some variability and modest heterogeneity among the studies analyzed, which was quantified by the I-squared value of 44.5%, the differences observed in the results are not significantly high. That is, no single study altered the mean estimate, which is evident in the figure right over here. So this indicates moderate but manageable variation in the study finding across the study when one single study is removed. Next slide, please, ma'am. Now, this figure over here is a forest plot of prospective studies examining the association between plant-based dietary pattern and risk of type 2 diabetes with and without adjustments for body mass index calculated using random effects meta-analysis. Now, this exploratory analysis specifically focused on the influence of body mass index adjustment on the association between plant-based dietary pattern and diabetes risk. And it very clearly demonstrated a considerable difference in the risk observed pre and post BMI adjustment. As you could see, the pooled relative risk before BMI adjustment was around 0.53, while post BMI adjustment, it was around 0.79. So this highlights the relevance of body mass index in understanding the relationship between diet and diabetes. Over to Jyotsna.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jyotsna, currently a third-year MBBS student and a researcher at Panimmalar Medical College, Hospital and Research Institute, Chennai. I thank the Pan-India team for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this journal club. I will be explaining about the results further. The data was analyzed using dose-response meta-analysis and subgroup analysis and meta-regression. Firstly, let us look into the dose response analysis. For this, the data was included from 5 studies, including the Nurses Health Study 1 and 2, Health Professionals Follow-up Study, Singapore Chinese Health Study, and the Rotterdam Study. In these studies, around 93.5% of the participants were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Next slide, please. All the 5 studies that were included evaluated the dietary adherence using the plant-based indices. These indices are nothing but the numerical scores that indicate how closely a participant followed the plant-based diet. As you all can see in the figure, the values ranged from 36 to 62.7. Here, higher scores suggest that there was greater adherence to plant-based diet. While plotting the factors, a significant inverse relationship was obtained. So in the figure, it is you could see an inverse relationship. This means that as the adherence to the plant-based diet increased, the subsequent risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus decreased. Also, as you all can see in the graph, there is no suggestion of any potential non-linearity. This means that the graph obtained did not have any variations but rather it had a straight line obtaining, indicating that the adherence to plant-based diet increased as the risk of type 2 diabetes decreases. Next slide, please. Next, let us move into the subgroup analysis and the meta-regression. Here, the studies were classified into 2 types. The first one was studies that used predefined dietary patterns. This includes whether they were vegetarian or they followed a vegan diet, etc. And the other was studies that included diet indices. Example, any numerical scores, which I have previously explained, that denotes the level of adherence to the plant-based diet. Upon analyzing this, stronger association was observed for studies that used the predefined dietary pattern compared to the diet indices. Here, this graph explains the dietary adherence indices that were used in the studies. Random effect pooled relative risks were calculated. Here, the value mostly ranged between 0.49 to 0.86 with a mean value of 0.64 for studies that used predefined dietary patterns, and between 0.77 to 0.86 with a mean value of 0.81 for studies that used diet indices. From here, we can infer that the studies that used predefined dietary patterns had relatively stronger association for lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Also, a moderate heterogeneity was found in these studies. Heterogeneity refers to the degree of variability among the studies included in the meta-analysis. Here, in this graph, you can see a p-value of 0.04 was obtained, signifying that there exists a significant association between the studies that used predefined dietary patterns and those that used dietary indices. Next slide, please. And finally, upon calculating the heterogeneity between the age, sex, geography, the BMI, sex composition, duration of follow-up, etc., there was no significant heterogeneity seen. This means that all the factors that were stated above were generally consistent with the adherence to plant-based diet. So these were the results that were obtained in the study. Now over to Dr. Melinda.
Thank you, Josna. I'll be talking about discussion. Yeah. Next slide, please. So this study is a meta-analysis of prospective observational study, and it shows greater adherence to plant-based dietary patterns was inversely associated with the risk of type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Now, only healthy plant-based foods such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts were included in the definition of plant-based fat. This was already discussed earlier. Now, as we already know, this plant-based diets, they contain fibers, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phenolic compounds, and unsaturated fatty acids. Now, this helps to improve the insulin sensitivity, improve blood pressure, reduce long-term weight gain, and also to decrease or ameliorate systemic inflammation. Next slide. Yeah. Also, it helps to improve the profile of adiposity-related risk markers, including leptin, adiponectin, high sensitivity C-reactive proteins, and interleukin-6. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we can say that plant-based dietary patterns improve the measures of glycemic control independently, independent of body weight for individuals with and without type 2 diabetes. And this suggests that the health benefits are way beyond the weight control. Now, this is a table showing different studies which included plant-based diets, foods like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, vegetable oil, and none of the animal food groups were included. Like you can see in this study of 2013 and in 2016, very less amount of animal foods were used. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Last slide. Yeah. Now, if I want to give the summary of the entire table which was presented, it just shows one thing, that unhealthful plant-based dietary patterns defined by increased consumption of refined grains, starches, and sugars, they consistently associated with high risk of type 2 diabetes. So even if it's a plant-based dietary pattern, if it is unhealthful, it will lead to higher risk of type 2 diabetes. This is the entire gist of the table. Next slide, please. Coming to the strengths and limitations. Now, the strengths of the studies are, it is a comprehensive synthesis of all available prospective studies with large number of participants and cases of type 2 diabetes. And the findings were consistent because of several analyzing methods which was performed across different subgroups, and the assessment was based on dose-response association. Next slide, please. Lastly, coming to the limitations of the study, all of the dietary exposures were assessed using self-reports through food frequency and questionnaires. So there were biases involved over here. Secondly, there was underestimation of the true effect size. Thirdly, the studies were just observational, which means that residual or unmeasured confounding cannot be ruled out in the studies. And lastly, meta-analysis included only studies from relatively high-income countries. With this, I would like to hand over to Dr. Nitesh to carry forward.
Thank you, Melinda, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Nitesh Pasare, and today here I am going to discuss conclusions from this study and takeaways. So, findings from this study suggest that plant-based dietary patterns were associated with low risk of type 2 diabetes even after adjustment for BMI. This study provides important supporting evidences on the possible protective role of plant-based diets in the management of intermediate endpoints like improved weight control, improved insulin sensitivity, and blood pressure control, and reduction in inflammatory processes. But we need further experimental studies to find the other these plant-based dietary patterns could benefit in diabetes management and control. Next slide, ma'am. So here I would like to highlight some takeaways from today's evening, that compared to an omnivorous diet, a vegetarian diet has beneficial effects on diabetics. But this is not enough, because in Indian context, where most of the times food comes from plant-based sources, and still we are labeled as capital of diabetes. For effective control and prevention of diabetes, having a well-balanced, predominantly whole food plant-based diet is one of the most important factor. And this diet should contain vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds in an appropriate amount, and with a little bit of variability. If we make our plates, if I say it's roughly 50% of vegetables and fruits, and around 25% of legumes along with some seeds and nuts, and remaining 25% with whole grains. That would help us to meet the recommendations of nutritional intervention in diabetes management. Here we can see that this slide demonstrates that just by making some small conscious choices, we can make our plate well balanced. And furthermore, to this, I would like to add that for the success of nutritional intervention, these interventions need to be more intensive and requires active participation from the patient's end. This is all from conclusion and takeaway part. Now I would like to open look. Now I'd like to request Dr. Sindra ma'am continue with question and answer part.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nitesh. So firstly, I would like to thank all our team members, whosoever has presented, Deshna, Dr. Nitesh, Dr. Melinda, Sandhya, Srinidhi, and Josna. Thank you so much for the presentation. So what we can confer from this entire study is that, firstly, I would say why we have chosen this study for this month is because, as we all know, this month is Diabetes Awareness Month, where November 14th is marked as Diabetes Day. So from this study, we can infer that by eating a healthful plant-based diet. Okay, so as if you have attended our previous JCs, I would always take this example. Like when it comes to a plant-based diet, it always has to be healthful plant-based diet. For example, if I want to follow plant-based diet, and I mean, if I eat French fries and say I'm following plant-based diet, that is not a right kind of a healthful plant-based diet. So by following such kind of plant-based foods, or the vegan foods or plant-based foods, it's not going to give whatever the benefits that we have discussed till now. When we follow a healthful plant-based diet, like including whole grains, legumes, whole fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and minimize the usage of these processed oils and everything, refined oils and everything. So it is going to impart all the benefits what has been discussed by Dr. Melinda and Dr. Nitesh now. So firstly, if we compare the animal-based foods and the plant-based foods, definitely plant-based foods are low in calories. Okay, so you can eat a whole bowl of salad, you can eat a whole bowl of fruit, but still you'll be getting less amount of calories. So that is which leads to a good caloric deficit, and that can help you maintain a good BMI range. And when your weight is maintained in the right BMI range, that will automatically improve a lot of metabolic parameters as well. So as we can see in Dr. Melinda's slides when she is presented, by following a healthful plant-based diet, it is actually going to improve various parameters like controlling the BMI. It could be improving our insulin sensitivity, reducing the inflammatory markers specifically inside the body, and all these benefits can be attained from following a whole food plant-based diet. Okay, so this is in short a summary of the or the gist of the entire today's topic. If anyone has any queries, please feel to drop it in the chat box, please. We'll be taking up the question and answers. And also, please do let us know in the chat box how you felt about today's session. Was it insightful? Were you able to learn any new pointers? Please do let us know so that it'll be motivating for us as well. And also, please do let us know what more topics you would like to get from the Journal Club in the future Journal Clubs as well. Please do let us know what topics you'd be interested to learn something new. And again, I would like to thank each and every one for taking time out and attending our Pan India JCs. Because of your constant support is what we are able to successfully complete 7 journal clubs, and we are hoping to bring out much more interesting journal club sessions in the coming year as well. Please stay tuned for our journal clubs as well. Okay, so any questions? So what about keto diet, LCH? Okay, so low carb, high fat diet. See, when it comes to keto diet, so what exactly keto diet is? It's very low carb and high fat diet. Again, I think keto diet doesn't, It does not say what kind of a dietary pattern you have to follow or what kind of a dietary group. Either you can belong to a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, and also you can follow keto diet. But keto diet has its own share of disadvantages as well, and a share of advantages. So, but to be frank, keto diet is not going to be sustainable in our Indian context, because when we talk about a keto diet, which is very low carb diet, the carb percentage is going to be like less than 10% of our calories should be getting from the carbs. And that is very, for example, if I eat just a medium sized banana, I'll be getting 20 to 25 grams of carbs right there itself. And it will not give us a scope to include good amount of fruits and vegetables. And when we don't include fruits and vegetables, we know what we are lacking, that is dietary fiber. So dietary fiber is not just, it will keep you full or satiated. It imparts a lot of benefits pertaining to gut health. It could be cardiac health, it could be. So we should not be missing out on a dietary fiber at any cost. And we need to include a good fruits and vegetables. I hope that answers your query.
Ma'am, can
Yes.
I add?
Sure. Yes.
So there are many fat diets that can help in reducing your weight. But if we really want to improve our diabetes control, and even if you are not non-diabetic and you want to maintain a good body weight, so it is not important just lowering your body weight, but we also need to take care of maintaining it in that range. So keto diet and low carb diets, all these diets may help you in lowering your weight in short term, but to maintain your body weight in that range, we need to look for such dietary pattern which we can easily follow means our entire life. So I think in that way, whole food plant diet is a more sustainable kind of dietary pattern compared to fat diets.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Nitish. I would definitely echo with your opinion, because I think for improvement in the quality of life, I think we should be focusing on the sustainable options, because when it comes to the keto diet or any kind of fat diets, they're not going to be sustainable. We can follow it for a month or 3 months, or majority of the people who wants to follow keto diet, I think they can max do it for 1 month. And the most common complaint they'll always come up with is going to be constipation. So fat diets always has one or the other disadvantages, because majorly they'll ask you to remove one set of macronutrient group. Okay, so that such kind of diets are never going to become a sustainable diets, because the properly nutritionally balanced diet, whatever we follow, specifically whole food, a plant-based diet that is also nutritionally plant-based diet, it will never ask you to remove any kind of food groups. So all the cereal-based food groups, legumes, fats, everything will be included, so that we can get all the micronutrients as well as micronutrients also. So, but a better planning of a whole food plant-based diet is very, very important, or is crucial to improve the quality of life again. So yeah, that's it about my take on keto diet. So any more queries? Thank you. Thank you so much, Shruti ma'am. Also, please share some inputs in the chat box, like how you felt about today's session. Was it insightful? So that it will be a little boosting and motivating for us to come back with much more interesting topics in the future GCs as well. Gayatri ma'am says it's a very insightful session. Thanks for the analysis. Thanks to the presenters and organizers. Thank you so much, ma'am. It means a lot. Okay, then if there are no more queries, I think we can end this session. But firstly, again, finally, I would like to thank each and everyone again and again for taking your time out and, being part of, giving us that continuous support to, keep motivated and to keep continuing with these JCs. We'd be expecting the same support as well. And we will never disappoint you. We will definitely come back with much, much more interesting topics in future GCs as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Yogita ma'am, and thank you, Sudha ma'am, for your wonderful comments. Thank you so much. It means a lot to us. And yes, we all will be meeting you again. The PAN JC team will be meeting you again in the next month. Until then, take care. Bye-bye. Good night. Have a good night.